Hello, and welcome to the Frictionless Experience, the podcast where we lay waste to digital friction. I'm your co-host, Chuck Moxley.
And I'm Nick Palladino.
And on today's episode, we're diving into how and why you need to prioritize building frictionless digital products. Joining us is Amir Rozenberg. Amir has over 15 years of product management experience, and he's led high-growth global teams from seed to enterprise, delivering functional solutions that create predictable and scalable business value. Now, his most recent role was as Senior Director of Product Management at Capital One, but he brings a long history of work in the observability and product development space, not only at startups, but also working with many Fortune 1000 brands to help identify and resolve friction in their digital experiences. Amir, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Amir, can you tell us about your most recent role at Capital One? What led you there, and what was your primary focus during your tenure?
Sure. So Capital One was a very interesting and different experience. I tried to make every role a little bit different from the one prior to it. Prior to Capital One, I was in a series of startups that dealt with specific solutions solving specific problems. In Capital One, like many other organizations that are bound not only to innovation, but also to compliance and so forth, the challenge was serving developers in a way that allows them to focus on innovation, on innovative features that create differentiation in the marketplace and really accruing a lot of consumers into the Capital One brand. But at the same time, creating applications that are well managed. And the framework for well managed, the mindset, is applications that are continuously available, that are performant, that are compliant, that are well within the allowed spend in cloud resources and so forth. And so what you're really trying to do is create both awareness as well as automation that will deal with the side of application scalability, application compliance, and the well-managed aspects of applications, while allowing those developers to really focus on innovation. So in a sense, we weren't looking at a single solution to a specific problem at a certain point in time, but rather a day in the life of a developer and a day in the life, if you will, in the application life cycle. And that encompasses not just one solution, but a number of solutions that really have to integrate well to provide you a real-time view of how your applications are behaving and what are your developers spending their time on.
Gotcha. And why do you believe it's important for enterprise organizations that are trying to build differentiated offerings, which I'm sure you've worked with, to prioritize creating a frictionless experience? Why is the frictionless experience so important in that?
Frictionless experience is really a key component, and I would say equally, if not more important than the feature set themselves. Say that you have a set of features that are highly differentiated and you even create market awareness to those set of features. If customers don't get to experience them the way, in a delightful and functional way, the way you anticipated them experiencing it, it's going to be a bad behavior anyway, and they're not going to like it, they're going to churn. You don't get a lot of tries with consumers, you don't get a lot of tries with business users. Imagine whether you're a B2B or whether you're a B2C, for example, in a B2B environment and you're trying to kind of vendor into developers looking for solutions, they have just limited time span, attention span. So are consumers, so does everybody else. And so at a certain point in time, you're looking for a specific solution for a specific problem, and there's just so much time you're willing to give it. And so if you're giving exactly that delightful experience, that user will be able to enjoy and utilize that functionality that you provided. The other way around does not work.
And what's so interesting about that for me, when you kind of talk about it from that perspective, is a concept I like to think about, which is developer bias. And it's basically when you're building your application, you have your own bias that's within that application. And it comes from a place of having the best devices, the best connections, the best computers, the best resources across the board. Your customers don't always have that. So that same bias does not apply to your customers, and that could start eroding that frictionless experience, even though you've developed it in your mind perfectly.
Totally agree. The typical development environment is an ideal scenario. You're very much in a clean room environment in ideal conditions. The reality is that your users are in the real world out there. And so they're experiencing different network conditions on different machines that might be old or loaded by different applications running in parallel. This is a real problem. And there's a lot of companies that publish a lot of research and activities for developers, how to find and how to mitigate those conditions and how to emulate for them when you're trying to predict what's going to be the user experience in such environments.
Yeah. So as a product professional, then you don't necessarily have direct influence over the development lifecycle, right? But you do have direct influence over the product lifecycle. How do you ensure that those aspects aren't missed when you're going through those research points, when you're going through that build phase? Like what's the big thing to make sure that frictionless is still the forefront in the thought?
Like many other things, the first step is awareness. If you can bring your real user experience as they experience it, evident in numbers and metrics in front of your marketing team, in front of the business decision makers, but also in front of the development organization, because at the end of the day, the development organization is as proud and as ambitious about the experience we're giving our users. They are the one who believe that we're going to add this feature, it's going to differentiate in the market. Many, many times developers have innovative ideas that would result in accruing more users or more usage and eventually more revenue. And many, many times the development organization are actually the ones who are advocating for improvement of the user experience, because they many times use the product themselves, either in testing or consumers or whatever it might be. And so, creating that evidence that is data-based, where you have metrics, and you are able to also show what is the implication of that experience on the bottom line, whether you're looking for leads in a B2B experience website, or whether you're looking for revenues, for example, in retail or hospitality. When you show developers, and you show, frankly, the entire organization from HR all the way to developers and marketing and so forth, you show the entire organization what is the implication of 5 seconds on your checkout page on your bottom line revenue. That is very impactful and very deep and is non-arguable. You look at the numbers and you see what happens, and that also facilitates the required investment in improving those numbers.
Let's get specific. Can you give us an example where you identified friction and then removed it, created this frictionless experience? And what was the impact on customers or the experience or the bottom line, or however you were measuring that?
Yeah, so, in past life, we were dealing with, a B2B environment, and we're dealing with performance engineers, frankly, helping sort of optimize a marketing website for a business-to-business company. And, the objective is, as you well know, in that environment is getting more leads and getting leads to go through the different pages and eventually to sign up for the service. For example, nowadays, there's a very big emotion in product management that talks about product-led growth, where we're talking about self-serve. People discover a service, they self-sign up, they self-validate it, and eventually they recommend that product, to their leadership for procurement purposes. And so you can imagine, when we're in that situation and we're measuring leads and we're measuring conversions, and some of the pages just don't perform, some of the pages provide timeouts for some of the users, because this was a geographically dispersed website targeting consumers all over the world. And so in that environment, the approach was to go and look at the performance issue and the business impact of it from a load testing perspective. The hypothesis was that the backend APIs and the website was unable to handle the volume. What we found by putting in some measurements for the user experience and so forth, for the actual user experience as they experienced it, is that it wasn't an actual load that increased with the volume of sessions. It was consistent lagging performance across critical pages, right? And so what we have done is essentially turn the lens from thinking about what pages are unable to sustain load into a business-driven discussion where essentially you look at the pages that prevent lead generation and conversion, and those are the pages that you want to look at not from a load testing perspective, but from the perspective of what is the sequence of elements showing on the page, what domains are typically blocking us, and so forth. So it's a slightly different lens, both from a business perspective and how do you actually go and improve that.
That's really interesting. And, you know, one of the things that I often talk about is, you know, it's not reasonable to say, hey, you have a product or a series of features, I'll even say, on your website, and let's just remove them. That's not a fair statement, because those things are there for a very specific purpose. So how do you balance that when you're talking about how in the journey you have a lagging experience because these specific features are no longer performing within a certain, you know, cohort of your audience? How do you balance that? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, so I'm completely with you. I think that, you know, you put features in websites, typically websites or digital assets, because you want to differentiate, because it's an essential utility for the user. You know, there's not going to be any mobile application today without Face ID. It's just not gonna work. It's, you know, that's sort of the foundational expectation. What my recommendation for the business, and particularly product people, and you asked a little bit earlier about how does product influence the development and specifically from a user experience, is thinking about the definition of done. And the definition of done of every feature, the definition of done, for those who don't know, is how does product define for the developers what is an acceptable criteria for accepting this feature. And so when you deliver a feature, there needs to be a definition of done that basically says, in order to satisfy the outcome that we're trying to achieve, in other words, that percent of user will go through this experience successfully and will not leave the experience and we won't see errors. That is my expectation, both from a timing perspective. This page needs to load in that many seconds in order for the user to pass on to the next experience, to have a good experience. And so as developers think about creating the feature, the mindset of creating a feature that is also delightful needs to be embedded as they work on it. It cannot be a separate item.
That's interesting. And that also brings up the 4-letter word, MVP. Yeah, that's one concept I've always struggled with. Minimum viable product, for those that aren't fully familiar, but it's basically just the concept of what is the lowest possible way we can go live with a feature, and that can bring in that MVP concept. If you don't think about it from a frictionless digital experience, it can bring in that friction in itself, because the minimal version of it does provide friction for a subset of your users.
I totally agree. And now you're talking to my sweet spot, which is sort of user obsession inside product management. The key word in any discussion about any milestone has to be an expectation for user engagement, right? You can deliver an MVP for sure with a set of features. And if your acceptance criteria is delivery, you know, you probably will be successful with the delivery, but not necessarily with the users. The users might actually reject that experience. If, however, you consider delivery as that percentage of users have gone through the experience and moved on from there to the next page or the next view in mobile and so forth, that actually necessitates not just the functionality of the experience that you're trying to deliver, but also the user experience, the delightness in providing that experience. And I think that's a very different way of thinking about things. When product managers deliver features, they need to set an expectation for how many users are going to go through it successfully and delightfully.
Yeah. And so when we stop at MVP, how much better is it to take it the next step further?
Exactly.
And is that quantifiable?
Exactly. That's critical.
So interesting you bring up quantifying, because I want to kind of talk about your work in financial services, because often when we we talk about how you can quantify friction. And in the case of, say, a retailer where a customer hits a slow page, they bounce, they go complete their purchase on a competitor's page. We can easily quantify that in terms of lost revenue, right? But in financial services, it may not always be a direct correlation. Either the switching costs as a whole are much bigger, or you're doing something that doesn't necessarily naturally tie. It's like completing a credit card application doesn't necessarily have financial. How are you able to quantify friction in the customer's experience, so that you could then prioritize and then measure that return on investment after you made the fixes to it?
Yeah, so this is really interesting, where we are finally able to tie the business into technology. So in every organization, whether you're a consumer-facing organization or whether you're a business-facing application, whether you're talking about the public website or you're talking about the portal itself, each user has a certain value to them. And each person in the company providing the service has their own metric. Marketing, you probably know better than me, marketing would have leads as a metric. Product will have the number of users, what's called active weekly users. In other words, users who are coming back to the experience repeatedly in order to consume the service. If the service is not good, they're not going to come back. You're reducing your weekly or monthly active users. And then the business would have actual dollars assigned to each user. So you have there like 3 different metrics by product, by marketing, by the revenue team, that essentially each user brings in each session and through their lifetime. And you also have a concept of customer acquisition cost, whether it's a consumer or whether it's enterprise. And so you can start thinking about how you can interpolate those metrics into complete workflows. Even if you're an existing user and you go into a portal and you operate, you can think about the 3 key workflows that users have to work through each and every day, maybe every hour. And then you've got a monetary value to that session. And now you can go and say, well, this page and this page and this page are very critical for that workflow. And from there, you can interpolate broadly what is the impact on the business metrics that we're trying to achieve. So what's really nice about it is that now we have a way to really tie technological concepts such as page performance or view performance and others, or errors or bad experience otherwise on the page on the mobile web, into the business metrics. And this really ties the experience together and the teams together.
Yeah, and what you just talked about might actually answer this question. So there's a perception that user experience is a big driver for business success, but unfortunately, when push comes to shove, performance and its impact on users is sometimes viewed as technical debt. And so how do you help show other members of the organization the value of prioritizing performance initiatives and not think of it in terms of technical debt per se?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, in the sense that, user experience is perceived as a business problem. Typically product management and maybe marketing on the public website would own user experience via analytics, right? So there's all kinds of there's a sea of analytics tool that would tell you the story. But the reality is nowadays is that it falls between the chairs, right? Because product or marketing don't really know what to do about it. The only lever that you have today is add new features. That's at least today's mindset. What do you do if you don't have enough leads on the website, or you don't have enough users in the website generating revenue? Well, you find the 3 features that are going to differentiate us from the competition, and you add those. Similarly, development, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, development would love more often than not to spend a little bit more time on the website or on the mobile app and improve the experience, shorten paths, and make the experience better for users, because we all want to see users spend more time. But guess what? The feature word comes in, because the feature is perceived by the business is what's going to drive more usage and more users, right? So development are always in this conflict where they want to improve the experience, but they don't have the time to do so because they're chasing features and they have technical debt. They need to be scale ready and so forth. And so this is the first time, as we talked a little bit earlier, where product can think about their success metrics, and so does marketing and the business. They can think about their metrics of success, the outcomes and the key results that, I build my roadmap on, right? And I report to the chief executive. We finally have a way to consider a component of user experience that's not only features, but a component of user experience. And now I can go and justify investment in R&D in that user experience, whether it's attached to a new feature. So as we discussed a bit earlier, a new feature needs to come, that MVP needs that fourth letter of experience, right? Or it's an existing feature that just doesn't comply to the expectation of our users, and therefore they're dropping off. And you can see that in the analytics.
And I like this concept of MVPX. That's fantastic.
Oh, I was going with E, but yeah.
We're now a 4-letter word.
MVPX. All right, that's new. We're gonna make it so. So on our when we were having earlier discussions, Amir, you mentioned that performance and site experience often are viewed as kind of techie or dense topics, and now, as you referred to it, it has to become ungeeked. Why do you think it's become so much more approachable, and how do you ungeek it, basically?
Well, I think that there's probably more, but there's two things that I can immediately think about, and in fact, I've experienced. The first one is demonstrating the direct link between user experience and that business metric that you are sensitive to. And you can complement that by actually demonstrating through something that's very tangible, like a film strip or, something like that, that shows, okay, this was the actual user experience. And I can tell you one of the things that, happens a lot with product managers is that you look at the user experience on the website and you can see how they move with their mouse and so forth. And you can see the impact of laggard websites, or web pages, and mobile views. You can see how that impacts the user behavior. And so if you make things very, very tangible, you can actually see how it impacts the business. And then you correlate that into the dollars or conversions or recurring users. You actually make it very tangible for the business, and you actually can motivate them to take action and increase awareness.
And it's no longer geeky. It's now financial.
Exactly.
Okay. What is a widely held belief about frictionless experiences that you believe most people get wrong?
So I think that frictionless experience is something that is, everybody believes it's owned by everybody, and it's actually not owned by anyone. Nobody actually owns it. Nobody actually today has the tooling to make it an agenda item. Nobody has the tooling to make MVPX, right? Inside Jira, make it real, make it be a thing, right? It's a topic, everybody cares about it, everybody talks about user experience, and we want to make it delightful, but you don't have that wrench, right? And I think that's the biggest misconception that I would really like to dispel, right? Now there are tools, there are ways, like we discussed, to demonstrate the linkage between the experience to the business metrics and vice versa. If you now make, for me as a product manager, I always need to bring the ROI discussion. What do you expect to happen from a business perspective so that the chief executive or VP R&D will make this investment? How do we leverage that dollar that we put into investment? Now I can do that. Now I can go and say, this page and this view highly impacts my users, and I want to sharpen it up. But the difference is the sentence now doesn't stop there. Now I can sharpen it up so I can bring that back that many users to the portal each week. Now I can sharpen it up so I can bring that many dollars to the business. And I can't think of a single product manager who would go and say, well, hold on a second. I could get a couple dollars back. I could get more users back with an investment in something that I know is a problem anyway. That's a linkage that's been missing, and I think we can actually do it now.
Yeah, and a way I kind of always have talked about that is you can look at a lot of this data, look at a lot of this correlative experience data that allows us to understand when those laggard experiences are creating those problems for your users. And then you can say, hey, let's go fix this because your feature has been good. You get 2 basis points, but I can get you 4. And I can get you 4 by fixing this group of users.
So it's interesting. So you're saying basically by creating almost a common language that works across the silos, without that, it's always somebody else's problem to fix. And what's ironic is with so many people touching digital experiences, it's everybody's opportunity to break, right? Because the break can happen anywhere along the way. That when you correlate it back to a common language or a common measurement, now it's easy to get everybody on the same page and break down the silos.
Exactly. And I think the flip side is also something that we need to be aware of. If you're not thinking about that X, and most don't think about that X, at least not pragmatically, everybody is thinking about user experience. But if I go and I add a feature to the backlog of my development team, I probably have a good idea who asked for it and what would they do about it. What I'm discounting, and this is something that we talked about at the beginning of the discussion, what I'm discounting out of that is what is the experience going to be like, right? Hypothetically, both product management and development and whoever asked for this feature assumes this clean environment, this ideal environment. But if they actually get something that doesn't work for them, that's not going to work.
Well put. Well put. So how do you keep up with the industry and what's going on when it comes to fighting friction? What are your go-to resources?
The Frictionless Experience podcast.
Besides, in addition to the Frictionless Experience podcast, the big X behind Nick's shoulder.
That's right. That's right.
There's a lot of podcasts and discussions by business folks, product and marketing about the type of content and the type of experience they want to provide in their marketing website, as well as portals that they provide. And essentially, what is their expectation? What are they trying to achieve, through providing those elevated experiences? And you see technological innovation. This is a bit more on the technical side. You see technological innovation, like when we had a single page application and we had shortcuts for mobile applications. You see all kinds of technological innovation discussed in podcasts and on the web that is essentially driven by user experience. And finally, I would say there's a lot of thought leadership that's happening between industry leaders such as Google and Akamai and others that are passionate about user experience and are really trying to make sure that users, wherever they are in whatever environment and tools they're using, mobile phones and web browsers, they have an optimized experience to consume the services.
Got it. And what's one question you wish we'd asked but didn't? And how would you have answered?
I think the one question that's worth asking is, how do we broaden awareness to this topic? What are the forums? What are the environments in which we find those business leaders? Because I believe, my belief is that the technology leaders are well aware of this challenge. They are looking to improve their website and mobile applications. But like I said, they have this conflict, that they need to mitigate with, product and other people directing the agenda and the roadmap. And so it's really interesting, product people, marketing people, as you're all aware, are very busy people and they have conflicting priorities and so forth. How do you create more awareness and educate and advocate more for this topic as really becoming the X in MVPX? I think that's really the key question.
That's good. One final thought to leave our listeners with?
I think that the topic of frictionless experience is real. I think it's very real. And I think that either being unaware or keeping it hypothetical, not making the linkage between user experience and the business metric, you can call yourself naive. And I recommend for everybody to get a little bit more educated, a little bit more knowledgeable about, no matter what tool you use, it actually doesn't matter what tool you use. make sure that you are aware how digital experience impacts your business expectations and do something about it. Make it part of your JIRA requirements, make it part of the agenda, measure it, show it across the organization, include it. It's not just features, it's the experience.
Love that word. All right, so shifting gears a little bit, Amir, you recently left Capital One, and so I want to talk about what you're officially doing now. I heard you make the jump back to startups and to one of the most amazing startups on the planet, from what I understand.
I'm a startup kind of person. I had a great time, a lot of learning in Capital One, learnings that I will take with me onto my career. But I am a startup person. I thrive in small environments where I can have a lot of impact and a lot of freedom to, push my fingers into all kinds of areas and create this camaraderie. And so I got very, very excited getting a call from an old colleague, a colleague that I really appreciate. And she's the best person ever to call me. It was the best news ever for that week. And I'm really, really happy to say that I joined as a chief product officer at Blue Triangle, trying to advocate for this agenda, trying to help product managers and decision makers include the X in MVPX and really think about it and finally have that linkage between the outcomes that you're trying to achieve and actually realizing those outcomes, giving you the tooling to justify investment in those tech debt and performance issues that you didn't have the tools to invest in so far. So I'm super, super excited to be here. It's a really challenging and interesting area, and I'm looking to make a dent.
We're excited to have you join the team. So what caught your interest besides Shannon, your good friend Shannon, who is our chief customer officer and phenomenal, one of my favorite people as well. But what caught your interest and what was the decision factor that caused you to jump on the wagon here at Blue Triangle?
As we mentioned, I've been a product manager throughout my career, and I geek out on users and user experience. And so, I try to find and solve problems that my peers are seeing and I see in the industry. And one of the biggest problems that I've seen in the industry, and I've experienced myself, frankly, is the ability to take user experience issues that are typically considered as tech debt and justify their presence on the roadmap by basically saying, not only we need to fix it in a very, very naive way, but actually coming and saying we need to fix it. The investment is going to be large or extra large or however development teams, define it, so that some business metric will be impacted. Users coming back, leads are converted, revenue is achieved, right? Finally, that line of thinking that would justify and enable those features, those aspects of user experience really showing on a roadmap, in addition to product features. I think that's a real problem that exists in the market for people like me, for product people and decision makers. And I really wish that, we can go and solve that this way, making that linkage between the business metrics and the technological metrics that represent the user experience. The reason I decided to ink that contract with Blue Triangle and join the team is because when I logged into the portal, I actually saw dollar signs. I was actually able to make that connection. So it's not just talk the talk, it's actually walk the walk. And I spoke today to an executive. So this is something that's typically unheard of, right? Typically the topic of user experience and performance, if it gets to R&D, we're talking here about the developer. We're talking about a performance engineer or developer that goes into a page and does the analysis of what needs to change in order to improve the user experience. Well, no. I spoke today not only to a practitioner that tries to optimize the experience for users, I talked today to an executive in a large company, in a corporate, in America. And basically that executive looks at metrics at the business metrics that represents how their users are experiencing the service that they provide. And that to me is new, right? Somebody is looking at these metrics and they're guiding investment in optimizing the user experience. And I think that's where Blue Triangle differentiates. We actually do what we say we do.
That's very similar to exactly what happened with me. And one of the things that I recognized when I was at Home Depot was that it's the general concept of the data that's collected by Blue Triangle allows us to understand technical aspects. That's your classic engineering observability play, but Blue Triangle turns it into something new. And I would always brand it internally at Home Depot and also say to just everyone that I was talking to, this is product optimization. This is not your classic observability. This isn't just simply going out and saying, I want to understand what's happening with my tech stack. This is, let me go figure out how I make my products better. And we've talked about that with, hitting some of those lower cohorts and being able to move those sessions from a bad friction-full experience to a frictionless experience, and developer bias and all these concepts that come up. And that's what this platform lights up. Very excited.
So in 2 words, I'd call it friction quantified.
Classic. Unbelievable.
Well,
unbelievable.
Maybe the product guy would call it friction optimization quantified.
And that's why you're not determining the tagline of the company, but yes.
There you go.
So now we're just all throwing stones at each other. Is that what we're doing today?
Well, I mean, you've got the X,
All right. Well, this has been a great conversation, Amir. Where can listeners find you and connect with you?
I have a blog on Medium. Just look for my name on Medium. I geek on experience. I geek on product tooling and practices. And I would love to hear from users through LinkedIn and through Medium.
Excellent. And so, Nick, what are the takeaways from today's show?
Number 1, create data-based evidence to show the business impact of user experience, such as the value of each user, customer acquisition costs, and ROI, turning the conversation from being only about technical metrics to being a business-driven discussion can facilitate investment in fixing and improving the user experience and metrics like conversions, retention, and revenue. Number 2, define the criteria for accepting and building a new digital product and embedding the mindset of creating a positive user experience as developers work on it to avoid introducing friction. Customers will leave your brand if they don't get to experience a product in a way that meets their expectations. For example, releasing a minimum viable product can provide friction for some users, so don't just consider its functionality, but the experience an MVP delivers and elevate that to MVPX. Number 3, making performance approachable and financial, not just technical, can broaden awareness of the importance of frictionless experiences among business leaders. There's often a conflict between improving the experience and chasing new features, but a delightful and functional user experience, not just the actual features, can bring back users and dollars to your business. When this is communicated across an organization, it's easier for every team to get on the same page and break down the silos to put customer experience at the center of product, marketing, and development.
And one final thought, you can make a difference at your organization by creating a unique linkage between business metrics and technology, user experience, and elevating every MVP to be an MVPX. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Frictionless Experience. And remember to follow us on your favorite podcast player app so you can automatically receive notifications when we upload new episodes. And be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcast and let us know what you think and what topics you want us to cover in future episodes. We'd be happy to cover anything that might be causing you friction. And of course, you can always find and connect with me and Nick on LinkedIn. Until next time.